is so much more to discover.
My name is John Gonzales. I'm the narrative director here at Guerrilla Games. I joined the studio about 3.5 years ago. They reached out to me specifically because of my background in open world role-playing game development. The biggest title that I worked on in the past was Fallout New Vegas. I was the lead writer on that. And I was also the lead narrative designer for a year on Shadow of Mordor, although I left that when there was still about another year or so of development to come here and join Guerrilla.
What was the biggest challenge going from a more of like a FPS narrative going to a more RPG open world narrative?
Increasing the sort of raising the quality bar on the narrative was something that was a studio-wide objective when I joined the company. And it was something that, therefore, it was never necessary to argue for the importance of narrative. It was never like, I think what people often think is that, the game gets designed and then somebody comes in and they kind of, write some dialogue. And that wasn't our process at all. The main story and the quests had, I think, a good 6 months of intensive development. On the narrative side and in collaboration with quests and then design before we were even writing anything. So there was a lot of narrative integration, and I think that that's one of the reasons why in this game as you play it, it doesn't feel like the story was added later. It feels like the world and the story are very coherent. It all feels like it's of a piece.
So tell us a little bit about this vast post-apocalyptic Earth.
Well, the world itself was part of the concept that they pitched to me when Guerrilla first reached out. So it already had this combination, this really kind of interesting, odd combination of elements of this lush post-apocalyptic nature that you just talked about, these huge steel beasts that are inhabiting that world, and then people living in this in tribes that were at a pre-industrial level of development. And so that immediately posed a mystery to me. I was really curious to get to the bottom of that mystery of how exactly that world came to be. It was also something that felt fresh. It was like I'd never seen a world exactly like that before, and it seemed to promise a lot of adventure.
So you mentioned about the base idea where they started the project off with. Having worked on this world for like the past 6 years, did they have to change a lot over the course of the past few years during development? Did the story evolve?
Certainly the story evolved a lot. I mean, what they had, I think from very early on, even the 6-year mark that you were talking about, was a concept for the world. And that was already being explored in gameplay and certainly being explored in art. And we also had a protagonist there. We had Aloy, but more in terms of what she was looking like or sort of what her capabilities would be. There really wasn't anything at the point that I joined the company. It was still pretty much a blank canvas in terms of understanding how the world came to be and also understanding who our hero was and what her story was, what her personality and psychology were.
Yeah, speaking of Aloy, she's become pretty much a new flagship character for this company. Was she inspired by anyone in particular?
I think, we've talked about this a little bit before, sometimes in other interviews, about how we certainly took a look at really strong female protagonists in other media. And a couple of names that we've dropped because they're pretty obvious from action films would be Ripley and Sarah Connor. But I really felt like as we worked on her story that she became her own character, that she seemed to transcend any kind of initial reference. In terms of the idea of her becoming kind of like a flagship or a mascot or something like that, if that happens, that's great. But I always feel very uncomfortable talking about her in those terms because my experience was that we were never trying to create an icon. We were just trying to create the most compelling character that we could, who had also the most gripping or compelling story as well for you to experience.
Yeah, so it's really about the character and not so much whether it would have been a girl or a guy, right?
Yeah, she was a female protagonist really from the very beginning, but we never imagined that as being some kind of key selling point. We always felt that the key selling point of the game would be to create the most compelling character possible, the perfect person to inhabit in this world. So that combined that made sure that we combined the capabilities that she would have as a hunter, and also giving her a backstory where she's grown up in the wild. She's really been hardened by that experience. She's tough and she's smart. But we also wanted to give her a big problem to solve, something personal, so that she's not just investigating the history of this world because it's an abstract, intellectual interest. It's something that she's pursuing because it's a matter of the heart. There's a piece that's sort of missing in her life, and she needs to find it in order to feel whole.
All right.
Why am I an outcast? Who was my mother?
With the rise of AI in our world, do you think our world could end up like in Horizon?
I think that there are immense dangers.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what future it is that we're heading towards. I'm not a futurist. I've certainly I've read the works of many futurists as part of the research for this game. The thing that I find alarming, I guess you could say, is that we've had 150 years now of science fiction warning us about the most dire futures that we could have with our technology, and it seems to have no effect at all. You just have military minds out there that want to have these robots that have the ability to make autonomous kill decisions, all of this other stuff, and it's just like, did you never watch Terminator?
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like how is it that the science fiction hasn't told us this is stuff that we don't want to get into? So yeah, I think that there's a lot of dangers. It's obvious that we have a difficult time knowing how to manage our technologies, and the possible outcomes of the technologies end up managing us.
So how open world is this game? So do you really have that freedom to really go around and do everything, or can you go straight to the boss if you wanted to, or is there a strong narrative structure in the game as well?
It's actually everything you just described, kind of, maybe a couple of exceptions, but it is a huge, vast open world, and there's tremendous freedom about how you can choose where it is you're going to go and what it is that you're going to explore. There are a couple of narrative gates that you pass through before you're in the entire open world that we use to kind of bring you along in terms of training you in what kind of machines you're fighting, and introducing greater and greater challenges. But it's absolutely a huge open world, the biggest one that I've ever worked on. And then there is also this scripted or authored central narrative, which is really Aloy's story, that you can pursue pretty much though at your own pace. You can go ahead and leave that story at any moment that you want to pursue side quests, or to go off and do some of the activities that we have, or stumble into random encounters, or to even just go hunting. So it's a combination, I would say, kind of a hybrid of really what's cool about an open world in terms of wide open exploration, and also what's really cool about a more authored narrative that delivers a story.
Would you say that you would have like a certain advantage if you do certain side quests to impact the growth of your character as you progress through the game?
Yeah, well, like I think in just about any role-playing game, if you're going to go ahead and engage in the side content off of the main quest, you can go ahead and level up. You can earn a lot of experience. You can go ahead and get a lot of resources that you're going to use to purchase upgraded weapons. You'll get a bunch of modifications that will go ahead and also increase the capabilities of your weapons. So yeah, absolutely, you can go ahead and supercharge your capabilities by engaging deeply with the content throughout the game.
All right, so any more tips for starting players?
I would say, I think it depends on the style. We actually did try to create a game that, for example, welcomes people who are really into story, really into interactive dialogue, all of those aspects of an RPG. You can really also play this as an action adventure if you want. You can just very quickly move through dialogue trees. Just kind of hit the exit button. You get everything that's most necessary in order to be able to do your playthrough. But that said, as long as you are a player of this kind of temperament, I would suggest you just take your time, soak it in. There's so much beauty in this world. There's so many kind of like little transcendent lyrical moments that you can find by just walking to a cliff and looking out over a valley, seeing how the light is rising behind, a mountain, and the light is spilling over. There's just a huge amount of beauty to enjoy if you take your time.
So for you personally, what was the best part of working on this game so far?
Do you have an hour?
No, I only have one question
okay.
left.
Well, it's been, it really has been the greatest experience I've had in my career. Just working with this team. Personally, the thing that I'm most excited about and I think most proud of with the game is the way that we were able to find a story that combined the personal and the epic. I think that that Aloy's story is one that feels substantial and emotional and doesn't feel like it's just every other kind of story that you ever find in a game. But the really cool thing is, even though she's pursuing this personal goal, it is going to lay bare the biggest secrets of this world and how this world came to be. So I think that's a really cool thing, that you're both finding out where it is that she comes from. You're kind of answering the biggest questions she has about herself and her own identity, but you're also solving the biggest mysteries of this, huge new world that you get to explore.